got that?
Sorry, you've got about 10 minutes to go. You've got 20 questions nearly lined up.
Yeah. No. I'm actually kind of I'm on a roll. Sorry, maybe
you're on a roll. But maybe give yourself 5-10 minutes to allow time for some questions.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Keep going, mate.
No problem. And so what we were able to do here was we actually convinced the city that we could get 50 meters on top of the tower, that basically we gave them 18 meters at the ground floor and we got 50 meters in height. And these are all part of the negotiations that you as architects will come to do to kind of make your projects real. And this is a kind of another project that's very dear to my heart. Is as architects now, the real focus is we have a kind of duty to look at sustainability and show the world how to build better better environments. And therefore, actually when you design buildings, the carbon footprint of the building is crucial, both from its kind of its operational carbon and its embodied carbon. It's a balancing act between the two. So the reason why I kind of mention it is because this particular project was quite an interesting one, where the client had a site right next to another railway station, and they wanted us to demolish an existing building and build a new building, headquarter building, that was twice the size. We came back with a solution whereby we said, keep the existing building and extend it in a low energy, in a lightweight timber structure. And this is like a graph showing the impact of those decisions. That the blue and the orange is the difference, is embodied and operational carbon. I'm sure you've been hearing about it in your lectures. And each of the decisions, what is on the left is the existing, and what we've ended up with by keeping the existing is the second one, by extending it in timber is the third one, by looking at a low carbon fit out is the fourth one, looking at combining all of the services for the whole complex together is the kind of fifth one, and the sixth one covered it in photovoltaics. And what we're able to do is really beat the Paris Agreement in terms of keeping our carbon footprint down and showing the future of saving the planet. I'm sure you will do this as part of your lectures, but it meant we came up with a really interesting solution whereby we had an existing building that we then extended, built a structure around it that was our tower crane to lift the timber up into place. And then we built a structure around the outside of it that enabled us to fit the client's brief in. And this structure, so the piece in the bottom left was the existing building. The atrium structure is the steel structure, and the L around the outside, hanging off the outside, was a lightweight timber structure. And then we learned lessons from the existing facade and the new facade, so it can be a naturally ventilated building. And we use the atrium to draw the natural ventilation as a chimney to draw the natural ventilation through the building. And the building is to be installed from the railway up. And here you see kind of what the building is today. And I think if I click that, it doesn't really work, to show how it expands. But underneath it, there was also, there was a big also network of connections to enable the station to function by lifting the building up. The people pass underneath. And then in many ways, the last project I was going to show you was I designed in Haramain high-speed rail, which links Mecca, Jeddah with Mecca and Medina for people, for visitors to Saudi Arabia to do the Hajj. And in effect, what we did was design 4 high-speed rail stations. We did it in a year. It took them 10 years to build, but they are really quite incredible, incredible buildings. And what it did was it enabled us, having successfully delivered Haramain high-speed rail, we then got the opportunity to look at the whole transportation for the city of Jeddah. And what Jeddah has is the image on the left-hand side here is London Underground. And basically, London has a population of 8.6 million, and it's taken probably pretty much 120 years for it to build its public transport system. What Jeddah wanted to do was to grow its population by 50% and build its public transport system in 15 years. So we had this fantastic project. 200 people were working for me on the project together, and we came up with a plan to how to do it. And in effect, one of the key factors we did was, anyone that knows Jeddah and these Middle Eastern cities, the lack of public space in the center is away from the coastal edges is really pretty tough. Here, what we did was, at least 50% of the transport system had to be above ground. So we used the metro itself, the viaduct, to provide a kind of shaded park. And if we did that, we found that we were getting half the size of Central Park in New York of public space inside the city. And these were just some diagrams that we did to actually explain the impact that our transportation system would have, where in effect, this is the city today, 50 kilometers by 10 kilometers, very spread out. What we wanted to promoting was this idea of these transportation corridors, and the development happens alongside the transportation corridors. Then what that does is, because there's a densification around the transport, it opens up the space in between the transport for other means where you can, you know, for leisure and for food preparation and growth. The nodes between the different crossovers then become towers themselves, and they become kind of, they're already building the tallest building in the world. Why wouldn't there be more of them? And then it gives an opportunity, a vision for what the city could be like in the 23rd century. And I don't know whether I might play this. So this, to finish, if it plays. Oh, maybe it's...
It often doesn't give sound. Does it have sound with it,
yeah.
Angus?
I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to turn it off so I can talk it over you. And then
yeah.
And then I'm finished. So in effect, because this brought all of our work together, because in effect, what we had to do was almost do a marketing piece to show them this is the city of Jeddah today. In effect, they all sit in their cars, and basically kind of, that's the way, they're all late for meetings, you can't get from anywhere. So what we were doing is to show them this is the impact, in effect, of what's going to change. The public transport's going to arrive, and you're in a different world. Now you're going to be able to take advantage of this transport to take you through the city. You have the ability for the city and the development to grow around it, access via kind of bridges, the connection into the different kind of modes of transport. You have elements of it that are above ground. You have elements of it that are below ground, but you have elements of it that are kind of under public space, where we're kind of crossing between different stations. Each of the different stations had different kind of identities. We always wanted to see one mode of transport, see the other mode of transport throughout the city. The stations were very deep. We had to kind of come up with a way of providing the structure. We also went on, we designed all the bus stops, we designed the tram stops. They were all part of a kind of a family of details. There was a Corniche tram that ran down by the dam. And we also had a vision then for what the city could grow to be like. The city will continue to grow around the transport. And this was a vision of what Jeddah could look like in the 23rd century, which is a kind of, you know, suddenly you're not restricted by just what's happening at kind of the traditional levels. There'll be a whole other level of kind of aerial connection that came across with a network. And with that, I think I will stop.
Absolutely.
Happy to answer the question.
Outstanding, Angus. So a really big thank you.
If I turn the volume off.
Utterly inspirational. I hope you can hear us. Please stop sharing, as amazing as this video is. Never seen such a flurry of questions.
Sorry.
Can you hear me okay, Angus?
Give me a second. It stopped.
Good. Not seen such a flurry of questions at this pace. There's no chance we can get through them all. Now, we're quite disciplined with our students not to let these sessions run too late. So we've got about 25 minutes, which is great. But if we were to give you all 25 questions, you'd fall apart. So what's going to happen is we're going to ask you to try and keep your answers to them to 1 or 2 minutes each so we can get through them. Some of them are really challenging. If we started with the last one first, you'd be here for 20 minutes on your own. It's just not the last anymore. 3 more came in since then. But just about the last one about environments was really good. So I'm going to hand over to the head of our student organization, MSSA, and he's got all the questions in one list, and he's going to read them out because there isn't time to go around the room. What I will ask amongst the students is, could you just put your cameras on, some of you, especially those who ask questions.
Lovely to actually see you.
And lovely to actually see some more people. So we'll put it on gallery view. Everybody's welcome to turn their cameras on at this point, but particularly those who ask these brilliant questions. Carlin, I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. So as Dan kindly introduced, as we are MSSA, the student society from MSA, and we would just want to say thank you for this talk. It was amazing. I think all of us found it very insightful and interesting. But now let's go to the real thing with the questions, because we had a lot of them from all the students. How we're going to do it, we're going to try to pair some of them so that it's going to be easier for you to answer. Yeah, the first one, I'll try it and read the first one, is how do you navigate waiting years before being able to go ahead with the design that you are passionate about? With a reference to the design of Camp Nou, for example. You had to wait for many weeks. You had to wait for many years. How do you cope with that?
Well, no, I think you have to do, you choose your battles. At the end of the day, I think the inception of a design is something that you feel very, you're very involved in. It's evolving, but to build these kind of big projects, on big political projects, they take time, and you can go and do other things while it's there. That's your career, and I think you have to. That's your choice you make. I think as an architect is, my wife is an architect as well. She has her own office. She employs 5 people. She does house extensions, and she works on the projects, they get built. If you work on national kind of huge projects, you have to wait, and it's very rewarding. You design them, and then it takes a few years, and then you get surprises, they're built. It's like, I designed, the World Cup final stadium, when it's completed, will be amazing. The fact I've had finished working on it 6 years ago, and I haven't seen it since, is kind of going to be a surprise when we're there, hopefully seeing England win.
Yeah.
I think it's just part of a job as an architect. It takes a long time to build.
Thank you very, very much.
And our next question is, how many people usually tend to work on a project, and how do you effectively communicate with everyone on the team and then reach an effective final outcome?
I mean, an interesting kind of thing. I mean, the size of the project dictates how many people. I mean, it's worth saying Foster's worth 1,500 people, but we've broken the office down into 6 studios. We find anything above 150 people is hard to manage. Typically, the ranges in team size go from 2 or 3, 5. When I was doing the Jeddah project, I had 200 people. So it's very much a scale, but we have lots of design reviews. The reason why I was late was I was in a design review, which was just like a crit that you have. I had my peers giving me a hard time about a design that I had done. And it was just like being at college. And that happens every day of the week. We all talk about design, and we're passionate to do it better than we did the last time.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next question is, how's the process of, do most commercial designs begin with competition? Because you were talking about a lot of competitions. And if so, how do you decide which ones you're going to participate in?
Yeah, no. Again, I mean, we're lucky at Foster+Partners. We did the Apple campus for Apple's headquarters in Cupertino. And Steve Jobs called Norman and said, I want you to design my headquarter building. Agreed a number on the phone. We got a commission to design the world's, one of the best buildings in the world. But many of the national projects, most of the ones I've shown you, they were a design competition. So we looked at them, we said, is the prize worth the investment? And for every one you win, there's probably 5 you lost. And what I'm showing you is the wins. The disappointments of the ones I lost are kind of there, you forget about them quickly. But it's a decision. And we want to design great buildings that make a difference. So we choose the ones we go for.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, a really tough one, I would say. Do you really consider that architecture can be a driving force in reversing climate change?
100%, 100%, because you make so many decisions about what your building is made of, what's its purpose, how it works, and you can drill, if you drill into that and make that drive your solution, and we have to start it. You can't say that's someone else's jobs, because you make so many choices about how it's built, what it's made of, how it's used. That's our job. In a way, I would, it's the next generation are going to do it even better than we did. Maybe we woke up a bit kind of late to it, but there isn't a project in our office that goes by without we start with what's the minimum carbon footprint we can do on that project. And a lot of it is reuse of existing buildings. So we very much look to keep what's there on the site and build around it, on top of it, expand it, then flatten it and start again, because that's the errors of our forefathers, I think.
That's amazing. And usually with the inspiration sessions, we kind of request the speaker to come up with something that would inspire the students. And we had a question that would kind of link to this from one of the people here. If you had to choose one piece of advice or wisdom from your experience to give to us as BA and master students to take away from this talk, what would it be?
Well, in a funny way, I would say no idea is too stupid. Trust your instinct and push the boundaries as much as you can. I've never backed off and said, I'm not going to say something because I think people will think I'm stupid. Nothing is too stupid. Look at every way. The best ideas come from challenging the first principles. And that's your job as an architect, that's where the best outcome is, to try and don't just copy what someone else has done before. Learn from what they did, but actually really try and push it. I don't think, and crazier the better. That's the way that you'll get true inspiration, we think. At least that's my feeling.
Yeah.
That's really fantastic. Also, I was not checking the time properly, so we still have enough time to ask a bit more questions, which is amazing. So yeah, we'll just continue. Arsha, could you please ask another one?
So we had an interesting question about how was the process for you moving from a deconstructive architect to working for Foster+Partners, and have you ever even further thought of starting your own practice?
No. I mean, it is funny and kind of, as I said when I kind of started the talk, I was, if you looked at my portfolio and everything I had drawn, it was full on deconstruction. And the natural thing would have been for me to go and work for Zaha. And I was very tempted. But back then, there wasn't much deconstruction getting built. And I didn't want to be a paper architect. I wanted to build. And therefore, I went to work I chose Norman Builds a lot. And he builds we build a lot of great buildings. So to a certain degree, I went aesthetic architecture design. In a way, I had to leave the deconstruction to one side. But how buildings come together, how you bring the pieces together, how they work, they're the same. It's an aesthetic that you applied over it. And I think, I still like looking at that kind of architecture and experience in it. But now I kind of see architecture in a slightly different way, because I see we're very much kind of engineering architecture brought together. Form follows function, and structure. Every Foster building you can see, we work very hard to make sure that the structure that supports the building is visible in the architecture. And that's kind of, so my architectural design morphed into something else.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question is, do you actually go and visit the different cities in the project, or is it more remotely, especially after the whole COVID period? And also, is it really challenging to work in such different countries and cultures?
Oh, I mean,
How do you...
well, it's interesting, isn't it? 18 months, the last 18 months, no one expected this. My life previous to the 18 months was, I probably traveled to a different city, a different country every 2 weeks. And I would go for weeks and months. And I spent lots of time in the different places that we were designing. not doing a great thing for my carbon footprint and the planet with my air miles, I have to say. But what has changed in the last 18 months is, in a way, it was a bit of a shock. We all thought we were going home for a week, a month, few months, and 18 months later. But what we've done is there are many good, I don't know whether you use Miro. What's quite interesting,
Yeah.
Miro is a digital pin-up space, and we use it kind of all the time. So in effect, you can't be in the same room, but you can still be in the same virtual space. And if anything, we've been more successful during COVID than we were before, because what it did was it focuses your effort. We don't do quite as many options. We're more direct in our solution forming, and we don't, and because we've got a global presence, okay, I can't go to see my project in San Francisco, but I've got people in San Francisco, people in Sydney, I've got people in Stockholm. I actually went to Stockholm it was my first visit in 18 months. I was there for a kind of interview last week, but hopefully that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sorry. The next question was, what was the design process like when you were working around such complicated movement of people in metro station and designing with these constraints in mind, with the whole with so many people that will move all around there?
No, I mean, the design process is remarkably similar, whether you're designing a house extension or you're designing a football stadium or a transport. You start with where are people trying to get to and people from, and okay, there's more people and the circulation, and you need a really good team around you, and you focus the discussion so there'll be circulate, you know, and really that's what we're very good at, is dissecting the problem, breaking it down into manageable chunks. If you ever look at the way Norman draws sketches, he makes a very complex problem very simple to understand. And the moment you walk in the door here, that wasn't how I worked before. I made complicated even more complicated, but I don't do that anymore. Now I'm very clear to, okay, let's strip it all back, first principles, and build it up from first principles. And it's such a good way to design. I'd suggest to all of you, look at the sketches and understand the thinking behind them, because it's just a great way of working. And we still draw. There's so many, I'm sure every 99% of the people in the course there don't draw, you know, you probably don't freehand draw anymore. They'll be amazing kind of Rhino modelers and whatever, but the ability.
Yes, we do.
Well, no, perfect. Long advocated, because it's still the best way to communicate.
No, a lot of us really push for it. Fantastic set of questions, students. Kevin, do you feel like coming in with anything here?
Yeah, I've got a whole load of notes, actually, Angus. Difficult to kind of pull them into one question, but I suppose what I think has been really interesting for me is where the sort of influences of a project are coming from. So you've talked about physical context, you've talked about a kind of cultural context, you know, the vernacular. You've talked about real logistical issues like people flow and, you know, sight lines in stadiums and so on. So I suppose it'd be quite interesting to hear how those things come together. You know, I mean, it presumably has to be a kind of priority.
Yeah. I mean,
how do you take that kind of mix of ingredients and you know, make them into that clear solution that you've just been talking about?
Well, I guess that's, this is the kind of your brief analysis, your site analysis, the feasibility analysis. So the first stage of any project is understand what the kind of the key constraints, but what are you being asked to do? What is the client asking you to do? Who is your client? And then analyze the, you know, one's the challenges and one's the opportunities, and bringing them together. So in effect, we don't design in our minds quite a linear process. So you don't start the design and then you've done a really thorough site analysis. And then when we've done we think we know it all, we're ready to start. And then we'll start and we'll make sure that we're always looking back at the questions. And we spend a lot of time, a lot of visual a lot of ears and eyes looking at a problem, and therefore we all challenge ourselves, let's say, and I think you become quite robust. The more people are challenging you with your design, how your narrative improves. If people don't accept what you say, it's probably because you didn't describe it very well or the thing. So it's honing the solution, let's say. And I think the importance of understanding what the project is all about and what are the goals of success, let's say, are crucial. I don't know whether I answered it, but kind of where I was, how we view it at least.
So I'm gonna throw in one thing, and then it's not really a question, but just like a little comment, and then ask Carlin and his team if they would just want to say anything to wrap up or mop up any last questions, Jonathan. So one thing that's really notable about across the course of your discussion tonight and then through the questions is that Foster's has really gone on a long journey from, you know, contributing to climate change to understanding ways in which it wouldn't and shouldn't. And you said lots of things like we've got to reuse buildings and you know, consider things differently, and a lot of the projects are about stripping away large areas of concrete and replacing them with other alternative models. So it would be really interesting, what you're describing almost describes that the carbon footprint of Foster's buildings, you know, should look on a curve like it's kind of a massive, you know, massive curve downwards. So it'd be quite interesting to chart that and the chronology of it, and perhaps find out, you know, you know, if that is the
no. I mean, what you're describing is exactly what we're doing. So in effect, you know, what I've shown you is kind of a whistle-stop tour through my 30 years here. Why have I still? But what we have is the kind of behind the scenes. Every single project we've ever done, we've done its sustainable criteria, how it operates, how successful it's been, and we've done it. And therefore, we check also did it do what we said it was going to do? Has it been of things? And we learn lessons from what we've built before, and it involves the next one. And therefore, kind of, it's a huge database of information that we have to make sure that we learn from what we've done before, and as you say, push the curve down, because we think that's our duty as kind of, you know, if we believe we're market leaders, then that's what you should be doing. And as the next generation coming in, it's even more important.
We just wanted to ask you another question relating to the sustainability and the importance of sustainability in architecture. Do you think that, what is your opinion on biomimicry? Does Foster+Partners use it, and how do you think it could impact in sustainability of architecture in the future?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a choice of the buildings we design have a lot of data capture within them, and because we do, you know, it's all the models are pretty much LOD 500 Revit models when they're finished, you know, and therefore they're given to the client, and the client then almost creates a digital twin of how it's used, and that then how could it have been used, and these things. What the client then chooses to do with that information that's where the question comes, because if you go and work for a company like Microsoft or Apple, you have to sign that all your personal privacy things are left at the door. Don't come to work for this company. That's where there's a kind of moral dilemma to be had in those kind of things. But we do think there is many lessons to be learned by how the building is used. Digital twins of it is probably the future.
Thank you very much. And I think
done an audit, and we've managed to ask you all but 3 questions. To those 3 questions we didn't manage to get to, I'm sorry, guys. Come back and ask more next time. I'm going to hand over to Kevin, just to wrap up and thank you. Everybody will see you same time next Thursday. It's wonderful to have MSSA in with us and our new partner, Jonathan. Jose will join us next week. Ray, thanks for coming back to join us as well. And Helen, over to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Dan. Just before I wrap up, actually, one quick question, Angus. What advice would you give your younger self from when you were a degree student, let's say?
The interesting thing is that my kids are now kind of 17, 20, 22. And what I say to them is, you gotta choose to do something that's going to make you're going to enjoy, I always, the fact that I became an architect, that you have to be passionate that that's what you want to do, and you can change, you have a huge impact on people's lives. But I enjoy doing what I am. The fact I get paid to do what I do is a bonus. So I'm kind of, the young me wanted to to love what I'm doing, and 30 years later I still love it, and I'm happy that I made that decision. But you got to be committed to get the most out of it. So I think in many ways the young me and the old me still are as excited the day when you wake up of what you want to do.
That's great. Well, just wanted to say thank you very much, and obviously you've had a busy day, so we really appreciate you joining us. Fantastic way to kick off the season. I'm particularly pleased that looks like Peter's just arrived as well. Yeah, great way to start the season. Particularly pleased with all the student questions, and obviously very exercised by the presentation. Lots of questions around climate change, obviously. So thanks everybody for those. And as Dan says, MSA Thursdays every week. We hope to see you again.